I'm Veronica Dudo. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, a peace proposal for the war in Ukraine could be finalized within days. We're at the White House with the latest. A new study asks the question, why do so many Americans leave their religion? We talked to the lead author of the study about the results they found. Plus, a Christmas tradition.
The Nativity scene reminds us that God draws close to humanity.
We take you to the Vatican and tell you the unique story behind this year's nativity scene. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Adelaide of Italy. Our top story tonight. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and others held closed-door briefings with members of both the House and Senate today as questions from lawmakers mount over the swift escalation of U.S. military force and deadly boat strikes in international waters near Venezuela. For the latest, let's check in with Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales. Eric.
Well, good evening, Veronica. It's great to be with you. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say that these classified briefings on these boat strikes are long overdue, especially after yesterday's attack of 3 more boats believed to have been smuggling drugs in the eastern Pacific Ocean. A total of 8 people were killed in those strikes. Well, both secretaries defend the campaign as a success that has prevented drugs from reaching American shores. Congress continues its investigation into the boat strike that took place on September 2nd that killed 2 survivors who were hanging on to a capsized boat after it was hit by U.S. forces. After the briefing with the senators, both secretaries addressed the media, saying that they will not get into specifics, but called the boat strikes highly successful.
This counter-drug mission, which is focused on dismantling the infrastructure of these terrorist organizations that are operating in our hemisphere, undermining the security of Americans, killing Americans, poisoning Americans, and this has been a highly successful mission.
In keeping with long-standing Department of War policy, Department of Defense policy, of course we're not going to release a top-secret, full, unedited video of that to the general public. Hask and Sask and appropriate committees will see it, but not the general public.
As you heard there from the Secretary of War, the public will not be able to see the unedited video, but members of the House and Senate Armed Services Committee will get the chance to review the video this week. Hegseth did not say whether all members of Congress would be allowed to see it, even as a defense policy bill demands that it be released to Congress. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say they want answers.
The least of my concerns is this friggin' video. Release it, make your own decisions. This is lawful. I have every confidence that what they're doing is no different than what Bush did.
The administration came to this briefing empty-handed. That's the major question that we face. And if they can't be transparent on this, how can you trust their transparency on all the other issues swirling about in the Caribbean?
This is all for show. They hate Trump. They hate Hedges. They hate Rubio. And you know, we went 4 years of just unlimited drugs flowing into our country, and finally somebody with the guts to stop it, and that person's Donald J. Trump.
For me, more of an exercise in futility. Really have no answers. Really didn't gain anything more than what the public already has gotten.
The closed-door sessions come as the U.S. continues to build up warships along with fighter jets near Venezuelan's airspace, even seizing an oil tanker as part of its campaign against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Democratic lawmakers have objected to pushing for a vote this week on several war power resolutions, but that's highly unlikely in a Republican-controlled both House and Senate. Now, tomorrow, Admiral Frank Bradley will who ordered the second strike back on September 2nd. He will be testifying and giving more information to members of the Armed Services Committee in both the House and the Senate. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says a proposal to end the war in Ukraine could be presented to Russia within days. He calls a draft peace plan very workable, but both sides continue to clash over territory despite efforts by President Donald Trump and Europeans to resolve the conflict. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Veronica, President Zelensky reiterated that Ukraine will not recognize Russia's control over any part of the Donbas region. Meanwhile, the Trump administration remains hopeful that peace will happen. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tells reporters on the White House North Lawn.
He's going to talk a lot about the accomplishments over the past 11 months, all that he's done to bring our country back to greatness, and all he continues to plan to do to continue delivering for the American people over the next 3 years.
But whether the president directly addresses Ukraine tomorrow night in his speech remains to be seen. Trying to end the conflict once and for all, President Trump sent Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to work through the issues with Ukraine, Russia, and neighboring countries.
We're getting closer. We're having tremendous support from European leaders. They want to get it ended also.
Senior administration officials believe they've worked out security guarantees for Ukraine, but territorial claims must still be resolved between the warring parties.
I want to see it end. They want to see it end. I actually think that President Putin wants to see it end. You know, I've had good talks. We've had good talks with Russia.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the U.S. and Ukrainian delegations could meet over the weekend or earlier to hold more peace talks. Visiting the Netherlands, Zelensky addressed the Dutch parliament today.
We are now in the midst of the most intense and focused negotiations for peace since the beginning of this war, for true lasting peace.
Nearly 36 countries just approved financial plans to cover damages caused by Russia's invasion.
Russia is no less liable for the damage in Ukraine than Iraq was for the damage in Kuwait. But Russia will never voluntarily pay for the damage it has done.
A Kremlin spokesman repeated today that Russia wants a comprehensive peace deal, but not if Ukraine seeks, quote, unsustainable solutions.
The problem is they'll want to get it ended, and then all of a sudden they won't, and Ukraine will want to get it ended, and all of a sudden they won't. So we have to get them on the same page.
Also, we're learning tonight that President Trump will travel to Delaware tomorrow for the return of those National Guard members killed in a recent attack in Syria. Meanwhile, the president's speech for tomorrow night set for 9 p.m. Eastern. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
The president's chief of staff normally stays behind the scenes, but a new interview with Vanity Fair is putting her in the spotlight. The wide-ranging article published today is based on more than 10 interviews with Susie Wiles over the course of about a year. According to the piece, Wiles said President Trump has a, quote, alcoholic's personality, even though he doesn't drink alcohol. She suggested Vice President J.D. Vance's conversion from Trump critic to loyal ally was sort of political. When asked about Attorney General Pam Bondi, Wiles said, quote, she completely whiffed with her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. In a post on X, Wiles wrote, the article published early this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. Authorities are now pursuing a new lead based on photos and videos of an individual taken hours before the deadly shooting on Saturday afternoon in the Brown University mass shooting investigation. The FBI has joined the search and announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. They have also released a new enhanced photo of a person taken hours before Saturday's attack, believed to be 5 foot 8 inches tall with a stocky build. Additional police have been sent to Providence schools today to reassure concerned parents about the safety of their children since the suspect is still at large. Meanwhile, a solemn memorial has been created on Brown University's campus following the tragic shooting over the weekend that claimed the lives of 2 students. New details are emerging about a possible motive in the Bondi Beach mass shooting in Australia. Authorities are now calling it a terror attack inspired by the Islamic State. Police say the gunman, a 50-year-old father and his 24-year-old son, traveled to the southern Philippines, an area known for Islamic State activity last month. Investigators are now probing the purpose of that trip. Police also say 2 homemade ISIS flags were found in the suspect's vehicle. The father, who was shot and killed at the scene, held an Indian passport, and his relatives say they had no knowledge of his radical mindset or activities. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released the U.S. jobs report revealing the economy added jobs in November, but economic uncertainty continued to dampen activity in the labor market. Employers added 64,000 jobs in November. The unemployment rate rose to 4.6%, marking the highest level since 2021. Employment in October declined by 105,000 jobs, with the private sector adding 52,000 jobs and the government shedding 157,000 jobs for the month. The sharp October drop was largely driven by the departure of federal workers who resigned under pressure from the Trump administration's payroll cutbacks. Joining us now is Dr. Michael Busler, a public policy analyst and a professor of finance at Stockton University. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Veronica. It's always my pleasure to be here.
So the economy added 64,000 jobs in November, beating expectations, but unemployment rose to 4.6%. How should viewers reconcile job growth with a rising unemployment rate?
So what's happening is the private sector is adding jobs. Most of the jobs added last month were in the healthcare and construction industries, but the private sector is adding jobs. What's taken the job numbers down is, recall when President Trump brought Elon Musk in and Doge to take a look at how to reduce government spending. Musk concluded that there are 2.4 million civilians working for the federal government, and the federal government could probably operate efficiently with about half that number. So they're trying to pare down the government payrolls and get government spending down. So what's going to happen going forward is, I think the economy will continue to grow, and because of the shutdown, we have no data for the third quarter. Fourth quarter isn't over yet, but it looks like the economy grew at about a 3.5% rate in the third quarter. I'm not quite sure the fourth quarter yet, but probably similar to that. So that kind of growth will add significant number of jobs, but the jobs number will be reduced because government employees will continue to, the number of government employees will continue to go down. So if you're working in the private sector, there will be jobs. Government employees, which typically are fairly well educated and can easily get a job in the private sector, but the number of government jobs will continue to go down.
How much did the 43-day government shutdown distort this jobs report, and how should the numbers be interpreted following the disruptions to the Bureau of Labor Statistics collection?
So it's a little hard to say because we don't have any new data. They were shut down for those 6-7 weeks from beginning of October till the middle of November. Government workers, we said, were laid off. Some of them came back, a lot of them didn't. But we don't have good data yet to be able to tell us. We also have a problem that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, with their job numbers, has been relatively inaccurate for the last couple of years. From January of 2023 to January of 2025, they overstated the number of jobs created by 2 million jobs over that time period. So we hoped, and the president brought in some new leadership to try to get more accurate numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Once we get the GDP growth numbers, and I think the third quarter number is coming out next week, the fourth quarter number will come out at the end of January, we can get a little better feel for how the economy is behaving. But the increase in the unemployment rate probably indicates that the Federal Reserve should have started cutting interest rates back in the spring instead of waiting until the fall. Also may indicate that they haven't cut interest rates far enough. They cut them 1/4 point 3 times. Many economists believe that they should have gone 1/2 point at least one or two of those times.
Dr. Michael Busler, thank you so much. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Losing their religion, a new study looks at why Americans leave the religion they grew up in. We speak to the lead author about the result. Plus, we're at the Vatican to look at what makes this year's nativity scene so unique. Uganda, a missing priest has been found in the custody of security forces accused of violent, subversive activities against the state. Father Dosdedit Sekabera had been reported missing back on December 3rd, abducted by men wearing the Uganda Army uniform. Defense authorities later confirmed he had been arrested for being a threat to state security and will be, quote, charged accordingly. The bishop of his diocese released a statement saying, "The Massacre Diocese, together with our lawyers, are still doing whatever is in our means to get back our priest unharmed. I'm calling upon all Christ's faithful of the Massacre Diocese to do a rosary triduum, praying that God's power may reign." A new study out this week from the Pew Research Center seeks to answer the question, why do some Americans leave the religion they grew up in? The findings show that 35% of those polled have moved on from the religion of their youth. Meanwhile, 56% have remained, and 9% were not raised in a religion and still do not have one today. For a deeper look into the study, we're happy to welcome to the show its chief author, Becca Alper. Becca, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, why did you decide to conduct this study?
Well, we released our third religious landscape study earlier this year in February 2025. It was our third time we did a massive national study of U.S. adults looking at their religious beliefs and practices and capturing their religious identity. We surveyed almost 37,000 U.S. adults. And part of that study, we looked at patterns of religious switching, but we want to dig deeper and understand why people stay in their faith and why some people leave their religion.
Now, regarding those who left their religion, what were the main reasons behind their decisions?
So among all former Catholics that we looked at, we find that the most commonly cited reasons for leaving include no longer believing in the religion's teachings, scandals involving clergy or religious leaders, or being unhappy about the religion's teachings about social and political issues. But when we look deeper into former Catholics, we see some differences. So, for example, among Catholics who now identify as, former Protestants who now identify as Catholic, which is about a third of former Catholics, the most commonly cited reasons for leaving is that their spiritual needs were not being met or that they felt called to a new faith. But when we look at former Catholics who now identify as religiously unaffiliated, this is people who tell us that they are atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. It's about half of former Catholics who are now religiously unaffiliated. They say things like they stopped believing in the religious teachings, saying it just wasn't important in their life, and scandals involving clergy and religious leaders.
So your study found that a majority of Americans remained in the religion of their childhood. What were their reasons?
A lot of people cite belief in the religion's teachings and the fact that the religion fulfills their spiritual needs, it gives their life meaning, those kinds of things is what keeps people staying in their faith.
And when looking at individuals who remained in their childhood religions, the highest retention rates were found among Hindus, Muslims, and Jews, all of them above 75%. Regarding Christians, however, the retention rate drops dramatically. Why do you think that is?
I think we find a few different things in terms of what people are looking for in religion. So again, those beliefs and practices or beliefs in their religious teachings, if being fulfilling to them, spiritually or finding a sense of community. But we also find that childhood background plays a role a little bit in this. And so we ask people, for example, whether they had mostly positive experiences with religion when they were growing up, mostly negative experiences, or a mixed bag. And we find that those who say they have mostly positive experiences are more likely to stay with their childhood religion, and those who had mostly negative experiences are more likely to switch and become religiously unaffiliated.
Becca Alper, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Christmas celebration. The inspiring reasons why Christians in Lebanon are celebrating the season despite rising tensions. Plus, the Vatican unveils its nativity scene, what makes it so unique. Welcome back. The Lebanese capital of Beirut hosts their annual Christmas parade despite rising tensions between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah. While the Christmas spirit is seen in the city's parade, which features marching bands and decorations in the streets, the festive atmosphere is complicated by the reality of continued tensions. Some residents note the difficulty in celebrating with almost daily Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon. As a nation with the Middle East's largest Christian population, Christmas is a deeply popular celebration, with tens of thousands of Lebanese abroad expected to return home for the holidays.
We don't give up, we don't despair, and despite all that we've been through, God willing, Lebanon will come back better than before. The Lebanese have always been known for their spirit and refusal to give in.
As the church prepares for the birth of Christ during Advent, St. Peter's Square has now been decorated with a Christmas tree and nativity scene. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Sedegren tells us more about their origins and meaning.
After months of preparation and anticipation, the Vatican's Christmas tree and nativity scene have now been officially inaugurated. Together, they reflect the rich traditions, culture, and heritage found across Italy. The nativity scene, in particular, features many traditional architectural and cultural elements from Naples, the area it represents, along with nods to religious figures important to the region.
The idea was to include not only the Neapolitan tradition, therefore with these typical Neapolitan shepherd figures, but also characters that recall the local territory. St. Alphonsus is one of these. Then there is Enrico Smaldone and then Alfonso Russo, who are servants of God and therefore bring a religious dimension to the region.
In a private audience with the groups that donated this year's Vatican Christmas tree and nativity scene, Pope Leo thanked them for their generosity and dedication. The Holy Father highlighted that these elements are not merely Christmas decorations, but signs of communion, faith, and hope for all pilgrims and faithful to reflect upon.
The tree, with its evergreen branches, is a sign of life and evokes the hope that does not fade, even in the cold of winter. The lights that adorn it symbolize Christ, the light of the world, who came to dispel the darkness of sin and illuminate our path. The nativity scene reminds us that God draws close to humanity, becoming one of us and entering our history in the smallness of a child.
Religious and civil representatives from the dioceses that donated the elements were present at the inauguration. The Christmas tree, a gift from the Diocese of Bolzano-Bressanone in northern Italy, was lit with Bishop Ivo Muser in attendance. The nativity scene, crafted by the Diocese of Nocera Inferiore Sarno in southern Italy, was accompanied by Bishop Giuseppe Giudice. Speaking with EWTN News, he explained that the nativity is not only a gift to the Pope, but to all people.
The nativity scene is a beautiful page of catechesis and also page of ecclesiology. That's where each person is in his or her proper place, but the center is the Lord. When we are off center, when we lose the center, we fall into confusion. And so we must strongly recover these paths, the paths of Bethlehem, which are paths of peace and hope, where we perhaps begin to understand that peace also depends on us. Peace depends on me.
The nativity scene and the tree will remain on display until the end of the Christmas season, which coincides with the feast of the Baptism of the Lord on Sunday, January 11th, 2026. Until then, the faithful are invited to reflect on the message of peace and hope they convey.
The first nativity scene of our new Holy Father, Pope Leo, the emotions are truly many. What I can certainly say is that we have been active for 43 years, and this is the most important work we have ever carried out to date, and it will probably remain so forever.
Mai realizzato finora e probabilmente lo sarà per sempre.
In Rome, Benedict Sedegren for EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.